counseling works and discusses residents' responsibility in therapy, the government informed consent.
I do these once every other week, or I want to do these once a week, and we're only doing them for an hour. So that means we can only do 3 kids, and kids end up sitting and waiting for that meeting to happen. And so, yeah, there are certainly benefits. There are definitely things to watch for that cause problems, unintended consequences.
Or perhaps intended.
Yes, or perhaps intended, yeah.
Juvenile Justice Services is a significant program in the state. The goal should be to help kids who are struggling get back on track. So it does both secure care and some prevention work. And if we do the right thing and do it well, these kids are not going to deepen and end up in our adult correctional system. Almost every state in the country is challenged with is making significant impacts in social service or human service programs. So when we are trying to get somebody to get a job or to get off drugs or to help them get their life back on track so they can hold a job and not end up in prison, we struggle in those areas. And in the country, we do everything from launching new evidence-based practices, a more data analysis, a more restructuring, but the impact on these kids around people usually is in the noise. You're lucky if you get a 2% improvement. So you gotta wonder, after all of this work of decades of research and analysis, why aren't we seeing bigger results? So we started this journey with that question in mind. Can we get bigger results with the same resources and ultimately have a massive impact for good in people's lives? And in this case, starting with these kids so that they can have families and a future and think about education and get out of the vicious cycle they're in.
And social service agencies are those often found in the departments of health, human services, workforce services, and corrections. They serve many Utahns at their most vulnerable point in life. So we have conducted a few different pilot programs where those are, we're testing different ideas and changes to improve services.
So we tested it in adult probation and parole, what we call TANF, Temporary Assistance for Needy Families, child welfare, and also our state hospital. In every situation, we learned something new, and we also saw dramatic results. So we've been able to combine all of our lessons learned to do a full implementation within juvenile justice services. And this generic solution is what we can use across social services to make significant and big improvements in people's lives.
Right now we're working with the governor's office to look at how we can increase capacity in our system and be more efficient in how we deliver services to the youth that we serve and the families.
Very often, the plans we give for people to change their lives are bureaucratic. They take a long time, they're not clear, they're not easily understood, and sometimes it can take us 90 days or more just to get a plan in place. Too often, we take too long to get feedback on how a person's doing. We staff a case once a week, once a month. But every day somebody's life is passing. We don't get early feedback on how people are actually doing. We overwhelm our employees with more changes in IT and policy and procedures. And we don't give them the time to create relationships of trust with families, to actually provide the services when people need them and the amount that they need them.
We did a pilot there in Logan with adult probation and parole, and we tried to figure out how to help these men and women on probation how to be successful in their probation, to learn how to think, to solve problems without violence, how to get along with their family members, how to set a goal to get a job. And so we worked with them for about 1.5 years, and we learned a lot of lessons there. We actually got to sit with some men and women on probation and ask them, what motivates you to change? And what was cool to find out is that they do have goals in their lives, and they want to be law-abiding citizens, and they want to have a good relationship with their family, their girlfriend, whoever that person is. And so that motivates them to follow the plan and to change their behavior and be law-abiding citizens.
The thing that we wanted to look at was their risk assessment score. It's a tool that we use to predict their likelihood to reoffend. And we found that participants in the group who went through the pilot and were able to receive high levels of dosage. So they went to a lot of their programs, they went to a lot of drug treatment, they were compliant. Of our clients that did that, 25% reduction in their recidivism rate or their likelihood to reoffend. Those that got a low amount of dosage that didn't meet the benchmarks we were hoping to achieve still on average reduced their risk score by 19%. So we still saw a good outcome even though they weren't able to fully comply. A client who didn't go through the pilot project, if they were to have a recidivism rate of about 70%.
And what we brought here to the juvenile justice system, the lessons that we've learned, so that they can learn from those lessons and apply them to their work, so that they don't have to start from scratch.
The kids that get involved in juvenile justice services could be anybody's child. That's one of the things that we have to keep in mind. Young people could be susceptible to drug use, other kinds of activities that would bring them to the attention of law enforcement or the court system.
The consequences are serious, right? So if we don't get things right or as good as possible for these youth and their families, then worst case scenario, we've actually caused them harm and made their lives harder or worse.
We define whether a young person succeeds in our system through a recidivism measure. And what recidivism means for juvenile justice is whether a young person has received a new charge in court. So they've committed a new crime, so to speak, within 1 year or 2 years of leaving our system. We know we're never going to have unlimited resources. We know that we're never going to be able to go to taxpayers and say, just give us more money and we can do a better job. We have a responsibility to look at the resources that we already have and to make sure that we're doing the best work that we can do to produce the best outcomes with the limitations that we have currently right now. And that's what the Division of Juvenile Justice Services is doing through this Success Initiative. How are we making sure that the services that we're providing for youth and families are the right kind of services for the right amount of time to produce the right outcome? If we don't go through that exercise of really critically evaluating what we're doing, we're not meeting our mission. We're doing a disservice to the community and to the taxpayers who put trust in us to work with these youth and families in a way that will continue to make our communities safe.
Years and years ago, as I was going blind, I was beneficiary of social services, had almost every kind of plan you can imagine, an individualized plan for employment, individualized education plan, vocational rehab plan, ticket to work plan, I had them all. And really good people, I know the people that work with me cared, but I felt lost in the bureaucracy. I didn't know what my plans meant. I didn't know what I was supposed to do with my plan. I signed it and I never looked at it again. It had no relevance to my life. The plans we implement for people can't just be things we talk about. They've got to be meaningful for people. They need to know it's going to make their lives better, that they can make progress and see a way forward.
We know that half of the kids that come into our system and into our care, half of them succeed. What that means is half of them don't do well. That's not good enough for us. We want all kids to succeed who come into our system. And so if we can continue to do what we're doing, we're essentially saying it's okay for half of the kids that we work with to fail out of our system, and it's not okay. Every child deserves the best opportunity to succeed, and it's our responsibility to help them get there.
The real value in all of our system happens not at the high top level with new changes to reorganization and new budgeting procedures. It happens when the person on the front line has the time to help the people there to help. That value is so precious, and in our organizations we should do everything to protect the time of the people on the front line. And too often we just overwhelm them.
I am a mentor, teacher, security guard, parent, friend, all rolled up in one. I've been with Juvenile Justice Services for about 17 years. What makes me passionate for my job is just working with the kids, teaching them, guiding them in the right direction, teaching them that there's more options out there, to have faith in the tools that they have, but more importantly, have faith in themselves, that they can be successful. Growing up in LA, it's just, if you didn't play sports, you either hustled or you gangbang. I have family members, gangbangers that are in jail, best friends that are in jail, best friends that are dead, friends that grew up that are dead because of gang violence. I think what made me want to be a counselor is that I felt like I saw a lot of myself in them.
We're impacting future lives, future generations. These are young people who we know have opportunity for growth, for change, and development. Just because a young person has made a bad decision does not mean they can't change and make a better decision in the future. They just need to be shown new skills and new ways of doing things. To help a young person realize their full potential, that's pretty outstanding that you can have that kind of influence and see somebody knowing that you've impacted their future in a really meaningful way. That's really rewarding work.
Growing up in where I grew up with, a lot of times kids don't know anything outside of their own environment. You know, they don't know any other option.
These kids are forgotten, kind of put on the back burner as the criminals and needing to be treated like adults and punished. And I feel like people deserve a second chance, the ability to find their best in this world.
One of the things that we did with the success process is we said, as we are re-looking at our system and trying to identify what would make the system great, we stepped back and said, let's look at it from the eyes of a young person that's going through the system. And by changing that mindset, we've actually come up with some new ideas that will make the system great, not only for the individuals that are being impacted by the system, but also for our staff, because we're creating a better work environment for them.
Every single youth is precious and important and can contribute to this society and add value to Utah.
50% of those kids go back after they leave juvenile justice, and that's the biggest opportunity, to try and create that environment with their parents or another home environment where they can leave and be supported, and they come out with all these skills. They know how to solve problems, they know how to communicate with people, they know how to set a goal, and they need a good environment to do that in, and then the supports. If that happens, they're not going to go back to juvenile justice. It's going to be a ripple effect. They'll have a good influence on their family, their friends, and when they become parents, they'll have a good influence on their kids.
Well, we've come up with 3 overarching strategies. And the strategies are really going to focus on how do we increase the capacity for our staff to do the work that they need to do. Because one of the things that we found with success is that staff are being pulled away to do other things. People came to work for juvenile justice services because they want to help kids. But if you don't give them that opportunity to help kids, then kids are not getting the services that they need. Staff become really disenfranchised with the whole process. Right now, we have 1 staff responsible for every 8 kids. It's just not feasible for 1 person to have that level of responsibility. So reducing ratios 1 to 5. What that will immediately do is give staff more time to deliver the evidence-based services that these young people need, as well as to ensure a safe and secure environment for our young people. I think the young person will experience more clear information about the expectations. We'll have a clear plan. We'll have specific treatment modalities that will be implemented, and then we'll have a clear pathway for how they successfully transition back into the community.
At the end of the day, the value is created between the frontline worker, the case manager, the social worker, whoever it is, the adult probation and parole agent, and the consumer, the customer, the person needing services. We need to make sure that relationship is protected, that the people, our employees, have the time, the skills, the support to do the jobs they were hired to do, that they can spend time with the people, build relationships of trust, follow up, make sure the plans are relevant and make sense. And unfortunately, usually those people on the front line are the ones that suffer the most, because we overwhelm them with changes to policy, new information technology systems, new reorganizations, and they're dying on the ground. In the years to come, Juvenile Justice Service will have continued challenges. New procedures will pop up, legislative mandates. The work is never done. It's every day, on the ground, doing what we need to do to make changes in people's lives. The magic is in execution. But it all begins with what we believe is possible. And if we don't think big, we'll never have the tenacity to break the conflicts that are preventing us from achieving those goals.